Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are continuing our discussion. We've been reading things that Prabhupada has said about leaving the body, and we're finding it very interesting. What Prabhupada has said so much, in fact. The whole Bhagavatam seems to be a preparation, in Krishna consciousness in general, a preparation for remembering Krishna at the time of death. But before we begin, I'm going to put my mic in. Before we begin, of course, we offer our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. And I also have to bring up the document we're going to be reading from. The document has been made available. Kamaniya, can you put the link? Do you have the link to that document? Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschachita Satarine. So I'm just going to bring up that document. And if Kamaniya can put in the link that I sent you, the latest link, then you can all have access to that. We have read about 5 pages of this document yesterday, and which is, I haven't added to the document. I mentioned I would. This morning I didn't, because we have 5 pages left to go. And I think we will probably finish these 5 pages, and then I'll put up the next document. So if you go to Kamaniya's name, if you go back, she said, no, not yet. Oh, there it is. She has given you the link on Facebook where you can see the document. And I'm just trying to remember where we left off. Yeah, it's page 5. So, but before we begin, I was thinking this morning something very interesting that you may remember from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And it relates very much to what's going on today in the world. Prabhupada talks about his disciples becoming pure devotees, so that by seeing them, other people will become pure devotees. And he gives the example that when people would see Lord Chaitanya dancing, they would become ecstatic. And that person who became ecstatic, then he would go home to his village, and people would see him, and they would become ecstatic. And so I was thinking how this ecstasy was, and this love of Krishna was being infected. People, the devotees were infecting other people with love of God. And so wherever they went, they would get love of God. And we see how the coronavirus, it's just amazing how it's incredible how it's spread all over the world. And even here in Alachua, which is Alachua County, there's only maybe 150,000 people in this county, and we have so many cases, just a little remote corner of the world. So I was thinking of that example, how Prabhupada wanted us to become pure devotees so that wherever we would go, we would be like the virus of prema bhakti, and then we would infect people. And as we would travel around the world with this infection, then we would infect other people. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that the real test of a pure devotee, is he a pure devotee, is he not a pure devotee? The real test is how, by his presence, other people become Krishna conscious. He's like a mirror. And so he mirrors back prema, and then people get prema. So This underscores the need for all of us to become pure. If we become pure, then we'll start infecting other people just by our presence. Not only our words, but our presence, our existence. If we become pure devotees, then we can compliment one another by saying, thank you for existing, because by existing, you're purifying the world. So this analogy, I think, is applicable. The virus is spreading, and we also are meant to spread the virus of love of God. But you have to have the virus of love of God, and you get that virus from another pure devotee, and then wherever you go, you infect others with love of Krishna. So that's our mission. It's stated right there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, practically exactly synonymous with how the coronavirus is spreading. So all of you, if you can get the virus, go get the virus and then don't do self-isolation. Get the virus of prema and then go out and infect everybody. And so self-isolation would be like the Babajis. They don't give it to anybody. They keep it for themselves. But the Vaishnavas, they go out and infect everyone. So yes, get the virus of Krishna prema and then go out and infect the world. That's our job. And I like this example because I think a lot of times we think we can infect the world if we're not infected. And so we have to be infected, at least if we don't have love, with chastity to the words of our Guru and Prabhupada and Shastra, and represent that purely. Excuse me. Hare Krishna. All right, where did my tissues go? Who stole my tissues? I have one for the whole class. Okay, we'll see how long it lasts. Oh, there's my tissues. Don't go away. I found the person who stole them. It was I who stole them. So, at least chastity to the order of Prabhupada, the order of your Guru, chastity to the mission, then you're infected. And then your infection will infect others. And that's our job. To become infected, find someone infected with love and become infected, and then infect others. That's our job. That's the mission. Spread the virus of prema. Okay. So, we're now reading from page 5 of this document, the top of the page. And this is from the Bhagavatam, first canto, 18th chapter, text 4. And as you know, this class is based very much on Prabhupada's words, and then I'm just commenting on them, and I think that's important. I like giving class this way because I think a lot of us don't read enough, and or even if we do read, putting everything Prabhupada said about one topic in one place, it's very helpful in understanding 360 degrees of that topic. So I titled this, By Grace We Can Remember Krishna at the Time of Death. These are all the titles that are on here, if you're reading, are titles I have given. From the purport, for a common man, it is very difficult to remember things as they are at the time of death, in other words, to be sane. But by the grace of the Lord and his bona fide devotees, the spiritual masters, one can get this opportunity without difficulty, and it was done in the case of Maharaj Parikshit. So, in other words, what Prabhupada is saying is, you give your life to Krishna, and then, Kamini put up the Google Drive, good. Jai Gora Prabhu. So you, so am I rereading what I read yesterday? Okay, let's reread it. Maybe something new will come. So what Prabhupada is saying is, I just have to go down and look at the comments. Yeah. What Prabhupada is saying is that, and Prabhupada has always said this, you give your life to Krishna, you don't have to worry about anything, he'll take care of everything. Because we worry about things that we can't control. Like, can you really control how you're going to die, where you're going to die, when you're going to die? Obviously not. Can Krishna control that? Obviously, yes. So, if it's your desire to remember Krishna, if it's your desire to be Krishna conscious, if it's your desire to achieve Krishna, then let him help you do what may be impossible for you or difficult for you, or let him arrange what you could not arrange. So Krishna can arrange a very auspicious leaving. For example, we have our godbrother Gunagrai Maharaj, and he had a very auspicious last 2 years of his life living in Vrindavan, and a very auspicious leaving of his body, surrounded by 50, 60 devotees. And he, when he was leaving, he was very weak. Everyone said, chant, chant, chant. And you could see, almost those last moments he was chanting. But almost for the last 2 years, every night he was surrounded by 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 devotees doing kirtan. And I was absorbed in Krishna consciousness in those last 2 years, because I was in touch with him a lot, and I saw the transformation, and it was the happiest time of his life. And he initially, when he realized he may not live, it was difficult for him. But there was a point, he was taking medicine, and it was very harsh medicine, and very difficult to take. It was actually getting better, but at some point his body couldn't handle the medicine, he had to stop taking it. And so then the cancer started overtaking him, and he became weaker, and there was more pain in his body. And he knew he was going to leave, but he totally made peace with that. And I watched this transition from resistance to total peace and bliss. And it was, he was just in an amazing state of consciousness. So all of us who knew him and saw that, we would talk amongst one another and said, yes, he dedicated his life to Krishna, and Krishna took care of him, and that was the message. And some people say, well, Maharaj had difficulty, and that's true. But everyone said, in spite of the difficulty, because he was so devoted, you could see that Krishna totally took care of him at the time of death. Totally made this amazing arrangement for him to prepare for death. It gave him 2 years, and always surrounded by devotees. And Kamaniya, you ever see him play the djembe? Nobody could play the djembe so sweetly as he, because he would basically play the mridanga beats, or play along with the mridanga. It was really nice. And some devotees say the djembe is tamasic, but not the way he played it. So that's the point Prabhupada's making. So let me read this again in light of what I just said. For common man, it's very difficult to remember things as they are at the time of death. But by the grace of the Lord and his bona fide devotees, the spiritual masters, one can get this opportunity without difficulty. And it was done in the case of Maharaj Parikshit. So I gave the example of Gunagrai Maharaj. Prabhupada's giving the example of Maharaj Parikshit. Look at that. 10 days, 7 days, he wasn't hungry, didn't sleep, wasn't tired, he could just listen. What a perfect arrangement. He could turn over the kingdom. I played the beltry also. Yeah, I was very fond of the beltry. So let's go to the next quote. So anyway, the point is, give your life to Krishna. Don't worry, he'll take care of everything. Just you don't worry how you'll live. Don't worry how you'll eat. Don't worry where you'll sleep. Don't worry how you'll leave your body. Give your life to Krishna with the faith that he will, because you want to serve him and you want to go on eternally serving him, he'll take care of all of that. So 119, I've titled this, A Devotee's Life is Auspicious, so his death is auspicious. This is again from the chapter on Parikshit Maharaj. The next chapter from the verse we just read. All inauspicious matters are removed from the path of a progressive devotee. Progressive devotee means not cutting-edge modern, but one who's making progress. As you make progress, everything inauspicious is removed. Meeting all the great sages at the time of death was certainly auspicious for Maharaj Parikshit. And thus he was blessed by the so-called curse of the Brahmin boy. So here's a perfect example. It looked like a curse. And Prabhupada is saying, Prabhupada is saying, Krishna arranges everything, you don't have to worry. And it looked like, well, he has to worry. He's been cursed. He's going to die. This is not auspicious. And the point Prabhupada's making is, no, that was arranged by Krishna. It's completely auspicious. And if we have that faith, then we accept that whatever happens is divine arrangement, and we accept it that way. And when we accept it that way, we don't try to fight it. Why is this happening? I can't tolerate it. No, we accept this is Krishna's arrangement for the ultimate good. And I've often said, I'll say it again because I think this is a nice meditation. There's some things we can't understand now why they're happening. We may not even understand later. But when you go back to Godhead and you ask Krishna, why did you allow this to happen? Then he would say, because if that didn't happen, you wouldn't be here now. You needed that to happen. So I think that's the way we need to see things. When something negative or bad or undesirable happens, why would Krishna allow that to happen? He would allow it because we need it. And we could say if we didn't need it, it could be some residual karma we're just working out. But generally we say our lives are under the protection of Krishna or the guidance of Krishna. So if it's happening, it's because it was needed, that Krishna knew that. And so he made some arrangement. And a lot of times our life is difficult. And if we're intelligent, we try to connect the dots and say, why is Krishna putting me in this difficulty? What is he teaching me? And then as you think, you'll realize, no, I need this difficulty. Or he's teaching me maybe that I'm creating the difficulty and I need to act differently or think differently. Or I'm acting properly, I'm thinking properly, the difficulty's there. Krishna's trying to detach me from something I'm attached to by not allowing everything to go exactly the way I would like it to go. Because if we're not mature and things go too well, it could become the cause of a lot of trouble for us. So if you connect the dots, then you can start to see why Krishna's doing things. Yes. Okay. So here Prabhupada's saying that death is auspicious. And I have not been around a lot of people who have died and a lot of people who aren't devotees who have died. So I don't know what they say if they say death is auspicious. My sense is that they grieve. There's a lot of grieving and a lot of, we'll miss you. But the Krishna conscious perspective is this death is auspicious because he achieved his ultimate goal, Krishna's lotus feet. What an auspicious death. So we don't generalize and say death is inauspicious or death is bad. Death can be very auspicious. It could be bad if you forget Krishna, but it can be extremely auspicious. Right? So it's an interesting idea. Death, which seems to be bad, the word auspicious, which means good, holy, sacred. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is from Bhagavad Gita 7:30, and Krishna's talking about dying. And I was reading this morning also, in the beginning of the 8th chapter, Arjuna is asking the question, well, how does a devotee do this? How does a devotee do that? And how does a devotee, what's his consciousness at the time of death? So this was on Arjuna's mind. In this culture, a more spiritualized culture, they're thinking about this. They're thinking about preparation for death. I was once, maybe 20 years ago, I studied songwriting. It was actually, I don't know why I was studying it, but probably because I was always writing songs and thought maybe I could actually write a hit song or something and retire after we sell millions. And I was thinking of a line for a song, and it would go like this: I learned how to live, but I never learned how to die. And I think that's kind of the national anthem for most people. In our education, they're preparing us how to live in this world. They're not preparing us how to leave this world. And so when you go to spiritual literature, there's all this discussion about how do you die? How do you leave the world? Isn't that interesting? And in material education, there's all this discussion about how do you live in the world? How do you upgrade your position in the world? How do you accumulate more things of this world? Which is really a destructive way of thinking, but that's how we're trained. And that's why Prabhupada called the educational system a slaughterhouse, because it doesn't prepare you to leave the body. So I learned how to live, but I never learned how to die. Or I learned how to live in this world, but I never learned how to leave this world. It's a nice line for a song, isn't it? And it's so true. And so people might ask, well, what is Krishna consciousness teaching you? And we can say one thing it's teaching us is how to leave this world. How not only to live in this world, but more importantly, how to leave this world. Krishna consciousness is teaching us the art of dying, just like Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, some of you may know him, he has a course called The Art of Living. And so, but the Vedas are really teaching the course of the art of dying. Of course, you could say part of the art of living is learning the art of dying, but it's an interesting title, isn't it? The Art of Dying course. I think we could summarize the Vedas, especially Bhagavad Gita, and say it is teaching the art of dying. So isn't that interesting? Arjuna is asking Krishna, so how does a pure devotee do this and do that? It's the beginning of the 8th chapter. And what's his consciousness? How does he die? What's he thinking at the time of death? It's also interesting because this verse that we're quoting, Saribhutam Didaivam Mam, the one that's up here, 730, Krishna is actually talking about it before even Arjuna asks. So let's read this. This is also some more assurance. You don't have to be afraid of dying, you're a devotee. So this is 730. Those in full consciousness of me who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation, of the demigods, and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. So, in other words, Krishna is saying, you're not going to be shaken when you die. If you're Krishna conscious, you don't have to worry. In the beginning, the first verse of the chapter, Krishna says, learn how to practice yoga in full consciousness of me. Maya sakta mana parta yogam yunjan manashraya. That's the first verse. And I believe this is the last verse, or second to last verse. How to practice yoga in full consciousness of me. Then Krishna goes to the end of the chapter and says, yeah, and if you're in full consciousness of me, even when you die, you're not going to be shaken up. And what a gift. As I've been saying, what a gift. You can die soberly. And you can see other people die and be sober about their death. What a gift. You can be sober about the fluctuations in the world. Now it's difficult. People are stressed out because we don't know what the future has in store. And one of the human needs is for security. We need to know that things will be stable. And when we don't know that they're stable, it's very unsettling. So for us, we have another kind of stability. And that stability is what? Krishna's lotus feet, right? That's our stability. So the world may be unstable. Krishna's feet are stable. And we have that faith that if we give ourselves to Krishna, then whatever happens, it will be perfect. We don't have to worry. It will work out the way it is meant to work out. And just like this morning, I was listening to a talk by a devotee. And he was saying, Prabhupada was asked about finding a guru, and Prabhupada said, when you're sincere, when you want to advance, Krishna will send the guru. Like he'll make the arrangement. You're just walking down the street and you'll bump into your guru, something like that, almost. And he said, but if you're not sincere, if you really don't want spiritual life, then you won't find the guru, or you'll find a guru who can't deliver the spiritual goods. So taking that statement, you didn't have to do anything. The Bhagavad Gita, you were at the beach one day and the Bhagavad Gita came in a bottle and it, like rolled up on the beach and just happened to be walking by it. Well, things like that happen. Maybe not exactly like that. But when we make our movie, it'll happen like that. But things happen that way. So who made that arrangement? So if you think how you became a devotee and how Krishna made all these arrangements to make you a devotee, then why would you doubt he'll make arrangements, proper arrangements for you to leave your body? I mean, think about it. This is a powerful thought, isn't it? You agree? It's a beautiful meditation. Krishna had made arrangements for all of us because we wanted to be Krishna conscious, right? We wanted, somehow we were sincere, Krishna arranged for us to meet Guru, to meet Prabhupada, to meet the Vaishnavas. Yes? He made that arrangement. It just happened, even though it wasn't like you woke up, today I'm going to find my Guru. I'm getting on the next plane, I'm going to Rishikesh. I'm going to find my Guru, I'm going to climb the highest mountain until I find my Guru. It wasn't exactly like that. It was more of an internal thing. Krishna, guide me. Oh God, if you're there, show me. Guide me to the truth like that. And Krishna did that. Yes. You just had to have the desire, and then Krishna made the arrangement. Same thing. Krishna brought us to him. He's going to take care of us. Even at the time of death, he'll make the arrangement for us. Christians are saying that a good living person should not worry about death because God will prepare death and a place in heaven. Yeah. That's nice. Of course, they don't understand. There's some details they left out, but the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, this topic is causing us to focus on the essence of the philosophy. The philosophy is, I give myself to Krishna, I give myself to Guru, and then I don't worry. I worry how to be Krishna conscious. I worry how to satisfy Guru and Krishna. I worry how to give Krishna consciousness to others. That's what I worry about. Now people are like, I'm so worried, this and that. Okay, we understand everybody's worried. We don't know what the future is. But so many devotees are thinking, oh, well, this is a good opportunity. Now that people are worried, we can talk about the temporary nature of the world. It's a good opportunity to start teaching more online because people are home. That's how a devotee thinks. He's not thinking, how will I get my next meal? How will I live? Of course, these concerns are there, but they don't overly absorb him. And so, because he has that faith that Krishna has brought me to him, Krishna has taken care of me, he will take care of me somehow or other. And I just want to give Krishna to others. That's the idea. Hare Krishna. So we read the purport here. Persons acting in Krishna consciousness are never deviated from the path of entirely understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the transcendental association of Krishna consciousness, one can understand how the Supreme Lord is the governing principle of the material manifestation, and even of the demigods. Gradually, by such transcendental association, one becomes convinced of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and at the time of death, such a Krishna-conscious person can never forget Krishna. He becomes convinced, yes, Krishna is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is actually there. He's in my heart. He sees me. He knows what's going on. He knows what I'm thinking. He's totally in control. And now I'm leaving my body. That's what Prabhupada's saying. That's how he's thinking at the time of death. Krishna is there. Everything is in his hands. Naturally, he is thus promoted to the planet of the Supreme Lord, Goloka Vrindavan. So you put yourself in Krishna's hands, you have that faith, everything is happening by divine order. Then that's Krishna consciousness. And that's how you die. And you may remember this amazing video of Prabhupada translating in his last days. And what is he saying while he's translating? It is amazing. It's like a total movie script. Prabhupada is lying on his bed. He's days away from dying. He has no strength at all. And he said everything is moving and acting by the supreme will of Krishna. Prabhupada is total realization and faith. He's leaving his body and it's total realization and faith that this is all happening by Krishna's will. And he's expressing that realization in the purport. Isn't that interesting? So, now, next I want to go back to the Gita, 8th chapter, because that's the chapter where Krishna talks specifically about dying and remembering him at the time of death. And we went over those verses, but now I've pulled one verse up, 8.5, and part of the purport, and I wanted to discuss that. I know some of this seems basic, but within the context we're discussing, I think if you see kind of the overall context of the theme of Bhagavatam and Gita, which is death is the final exam, it becomes more interesting. And as we've said many times, life is just a preparation for the exam. You know, a beautiful thought, and we all know this because we're all students. It doesn't matter so much your consciousness that you go into the exam with. What really matters most is how well prepared you are. And I've seen sometimes with my daughter, she would go in and do really well on an exam, but she had studied, she had really well prepared, but she didn't feel she was so well prepared. But she actually was, and she did really good. So even though she was doubting that she may do well, that didn't matter. What mattered was that she prepared really well. Really, really well. And then she did really, really well. So anything you're going to do, you win at it in the preparation, in the learning, in the practice, or as they say, in sports, you win the game in the practice and the preparation. The boxing match, you win it at the gym. So in the same way, this remembering of Krishna at the time of death, it's not like we can just go into the time of death not having been Krishna conscious and think, hey, I'm going to buck the whole system. I'm going to just enjoy life, do whatever I want. At the end of life, when I'm dying, then I'll get serious, and then I'll go into samadhi. It doesn't work that way. You're not going to win the boxing match just because you have the right attitude on the day of the fight, or just because you ate well the day before and got a good night's rest. You have to exercise. You have to train month after month after month after month. So you're training your whole life, and then what happens? You're taking your final exam. You've prepared for it. So don't think you can take the final exam and do well and just in the last day or two cram the last. Oh, I'm going to die. I have a week to live. Okay, Hare Krishna, I'll chant 64 rounds a day. Oh, that's good. You should do it. But it's not that easy. That you just do everything. So let's read the purport. In this verse, the importance of Krishna consciousness is stressed. Anyone who quits his body in Krishna consciousness is at once transferred to the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is the purest of the pure. Therefore, anyone who is constantly Krishna conscious is also the purest of the pure. The word smaran, remembering, is important. Remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service. There it is. Let's read that again. Remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service. Therefore, one should practice Krishna consciousness from the very beginning of life. If one wants to achieve success at the end of his life, the process of remembering Krishna is essential. Therefore, one should constantly, incessantly chant the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Lord Chaitanya has advised that one be as tolerant as a tree, Toror api sahishnuna. There may be so many impediments for a person who is chanting Hare Krishna. Nonetheless, tolerating all these impediments, one should continue to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Kat says, I have a lot of work to do before my final exam, and I hope school doesn't close before I get my coursework. Well, you know, sometimes you have a pop quiz. And so Prabhupada would always say, now, be Krishna conscious now. Why now? Because you don't know when the end's going to be. One man said, you're giving sannyas to such young men. They should have it when they're old. And Prabhupada said, well, what does old mean? And the man said, old means when you're closer to death. And Prabhupada said, so can you guarantee you're not close to death? Can you guarantee a young man is not close to death? No. So, now, urgency. Yeah, this was Prabhupada's message. Be urgent. You see, Maya wants you to be urgent with her. Everything's important in this world. Get ahead, get more, do more. And Prabhupada is, give your life to Krishna. Spread this movement. That's what we want you to do. Make other people Krishna conscious. That's the urgency. There's a beautiful story. Oh, you'll love this story. Well, there are actually a few stories like this in which Prabhupada told a disciple, if you just do this service or dedicate yourself to this service, he'll take you back to Godhead. You don't even have to worry. Because sometimes devotees would be very concerned, like you're saying, Kat, I don't know if I have enough time to be Krishna conscious. And maybe they'd even want to do something that they thought would help them become more Krishna conscious. And oftentimes in these situations, Prabhupada's answer was, dedicate your life to make other people Krishna conscious, and Krishna will take care of you. So there's one story, the GBC of India was working with Prabhupada, and it was a very difficult time in trying to legally get the land where they built the Juhu temple. And there was the man who sold the land was cheating the devotees. And they later found out that our lawyers were actually on the side of the other man, and etc., etc. So a very difficult situation. And this devotee's mind was really disturbed. And he said, Prabhupada, I'm not chanting well, I don't have time to read. And Prabhupada said, just give this life to Krishna. Just do what you have to do. And Krishna, Lord Chaitanya will come and take you back to Godhead. So it doesn't mean we neglect our sadhana, but it means that when you dedicate yourself in this way, you should know you don't have to worry. That is very, very important thought, because some of us like to worry about everything, and some of us worry if we don't have anything to worry about. It's like, oh my God, I'm really stressed out. Prabhu, Mataji, why are you stressed? I don't know, there's nothing to worry about. Everything's just like going perfectly. I'm worried that it's not going to go perfectly. I need something to worry about. So some of us are like that. And Prabhupada is teaching us that if you give your life to Krishna, then you don't have to worry. As I said before, I mean, just look at it. It's like, we're trying to make so many arrangements. Like what can we arrange? I mean, we can arrange some things, but how well can we arrange it, right? I was mentioning that when I was in China, I met a devotee. She wants to become a disciple, and she brought me to her company. And so we did a program there for all the leaders of that company. And then after I left, a few days later, she said, we're starting this big like international yoga center as part of our company. And then said, we'd like you to be the guru of our company. And I said, okay, I'll be your guru. And I thought, well, like, how could you become a guru of a big company like that, a multi-million-dollar project? Well, Krishna could do that. I couldn't. Wake up this morning, I want to become guru of a company like that. Whatever guru of that company means, we'll find out. But obviously, it means something good will come out of it. But that's my point, that what you can't do, Krishna could do, Krishna can arrange. So that's the point. So we should worry that the whole world is not Krishna conscious. But Prabhupada's mood was, you don't have to worry so much about yourself. Krishna will take care of that. And if I don't have to worry how I will live, then Prabhupada's extending that to say, well, you don't have to worry about how you live. You also don't have to worry about how you'll leave your body and how that will happen. And how, what if I get old and no one takes care of me? And, that's probably not going to happen. And if that were to happen, ultimately we would have to see that this would be Krishna's arrangement for some reason. But generally, we don't see devotees have a difficult time eating. We don't see many skinny devotees, right? There's plenty of prasadam, and I don't know any homeless devotees. I don't know that many skinny devotees, and the skinny ones I know probably eat more than the fat ones. They just burn it all up. So we see practically, no matter what a devotee goes through, that generally, somehow or other, Krishna is managing to keep body and soul together. So we extend that idea to leaving the body, that Krishna will also make the proper arrangements. And so faith is very important. And Prabhupada wants us to have that faith, right? You agree? He wants us to have that faith. I would say he's begging us to have that faith. And he's always teaching us to have that faith. He's always telling us things that would give us that faith. Now, we look at Prabhupada. Look at Prabhupada as the exemplar of faith. Okay, I will come to America. I don't know if I will live. I don't know the result. It's the desire of my guru. Krishna, if you want, you could make it happen. Okay, let's do it. And then Prabhupada does it. Okay. That's the example, right? That's the example. And I'll travel around the world and we'll spread Krishna consciousness. So we have that example. Okay, let's go to 5.8.28. This is really interesting. This is the story of Jad Bharat and how Krishna saved Jad Bharat. Even though in Jad Bharat's previous life he became a deer, but that wasn't a problem. It was actually Krishna's arrangement. And we'll discuss that, how that happens. Even a devotee becomes an animal, he further advances in Krishna consciousness. Translation: although in the body of a deer, Bharat Maharaj, due to his rigid devotional service in his past life, could understand the cause of his birth in that body. Considering his past and present life, he constantly repented his activities, speaking in the following way. In other words, he was now born as a deer, but he could remember his past life. And he understood exactly why he took birth in the body of a deer. Purport: this is a special concession for a devotee. Even if he attains a body that is non-human, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he advances further in devotional service, whether by remembering his past life or by natural causes. It is not easy for a common man to remember the activities of his past life, but Bharat Maharaj could remember his past activities due to his great sacrifices and engagement in devotional service. Now, there's another thing that Prabhupada has said, which you may have heard, about animals born in Vrindavan, or born in the holy Dham. He said that sometimes a devotee becomes sinful and Krishna causes him to take birth in the Dham as an animal to save him, because if the animal engages in what would be sinful for a human being, it's not sinful for an animal. And then the animal's in the Dham, he's walking, rolling in the dust, and in that life he becomes purified. Prabhupada said that life he becomes purified. So even though he took birth as an animal, then he goes back to Krishna in the next life, or goes into Krishna Lila, or goes back into the human life to do devotional service. But more progress, purified of that sinful desire, or somewhat purified of that sinful desire that caused him to take birth as an animal. So that is a beautiful example of how what appears to be materially something horrible is actually Krishna's arrangement to help the devotees, so that even we may take birth as an animal. It's under Daivim Prakritim. Mahatmanas tumam partha Daivim Prakritim ashrita. My devotees are under the Daivim Prakriti, that Krishna's, ultimately he's controlling. So that's a beautiful thought, isn't it? That even Krishna may cause me to take birth as an animal, but it's obviously unlikely. But if it did happen, it's because it would help me progress in my Krishna consciousness. Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? Don't you think it's amazing? It's interesting. These are all like interesting meditations, aren't they, that can really help us. Even I took birth as an animal, Krishna won't forget me. So this is the faith we have, that if we sincerely execute the process, gradually Krishna will help us and guide us. And I was thinking this morning of something similar, a little message to the, excuse me, I want to do something here, a little message to the devotees who are not married, who are finding a hard time to find a partner, or who always end up finding the wrong partner. That I think we need the same kind of faith, that be sincere in your devotional service, have that, need to, that show Krishna that your desire is to become a pure devotee, that's really what you want. You're putting your hands at his feet, you're giving your life to him with that desire, and say, Krishna, please help me in my efforts. And Krishna will help you. We have to have that also, because sometimes we see how, especially I've seen how sometimes we're trying to, this is the one I want to marry, but that one you want to marry may not want to marry you, or is not qualified to marry you. Or that one you want to marry may be really the wrong person. And sometimes we see that Krishna makes a beautiful arrangement for a very sincere devotee to get a very good husband or wife, even sometimes without any endeavor on their own. And I'm not saying that we just sit around and do nothing, but sometimes, in some situations, we can't do anything other than be sincere. And I was just listening this morning to this beautiful thought. It's a tangential thought. That means it's a tangent. But it's a beautiful thought. You come to Krishna consciousness with the sincerity that you want pure devotional service. That's why we come. That heart. I want Krishna. I want to be God conscious. This is what I want. This is what I need. And then always check yourself that's why how do we say it? That's why you're still here. That's what you still want. That you're not motivated by anything else. And if we always keep that motivation, Krishna, I want purity. Whatever happens, this is what I want. And I'm surrendered to you. And you know what I need to help me in my devotional service. And I am at your mercy. So that's very important to have that mood. Otherwise, if we don't have that mood, then a lot of times we'll try to control things which are beyond our control, and we just become miserable. We'll become let down, and certain things we just are obvious that we can't control. And it doesn't mean that we don't try to make things happen, but sometimes we can't make things happen, and we have to pull back a little bit in realization that it's not going to happen right now, or it's not meant to happen right now, or I can't make it happen. And so obviously death is this point where we lose control. And that's why I think it's so important for us now, while we're alive, to practice not trying to control what we can't control, because ultimately, at the time of death, obviously, control is being taken away from us, or if we're dying slowly, control of our body, or control of the pain in the body, is largely being taken away from us. And so we need to practice now, otherwise it's going to be really difficult to face that situation if we're so used to having everything exactly the way we want it, when we want it, and controlling every minute detail of everything. Then what happens when that control is taken away from us? Then what do? We go completely insane, crazy, lose our mind. And that's why Krishna is saying in that verse we read that even at the time of death one can know me and one can be sober, because he's practiced accepting Krishna's control, and he's practiced accepting what he can't control. So then when he enters that last stage of life, he's so used to being able to enter situations which he can't control gracefully, with dependence on Krishna, that you can control, I can't control. And that's the whole point that Prabhupada's making. If you don't practice these things, if you can't even get through a little difficult situation, well, how are you going to get through death? I get so many letters of difficulties that devotees are going through, but nothing like death. I mean, almost like death, a bad mother-in-law, pretty close. But seriously, nothing that bad as death. And so oftentimes devotees have very, very difficult times dealing with those things. And if we have difficult times dealing with those things, then what to speak of leaving our body? So, but if we can practice being able to tolerate difficulties, not losing our minds, being able to see Krishna's plan behind things that don't go our way, and being able to accept that, then we're very well prepared to be in a sober state when we're leaving our body. But if that's not our practice, then when our loved ones leave their bodies, when we're preparing to leave our body, it's going to be really, really difficult. I remember about, that's how Canadians say about. I remember about I'm not Canadian, but I did spend some time there. A couple years ago, you may remember that Kadamba Kanana Maharaj had some difficulty. Initially, I think he had prostate cancer, and initially, when you get these things and they do the test, you don't know the prognosis yet. You're just waiting. Well, how bad is it, and what's going to be needed, and is this critical, and so forth. So, Jayadvaita Swami we were discussing. I think we were together with Gunagraya Maharaj a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And around that time, Kadamba Kanana Maharaj had his difficulty, and he was discussing that with me, and he's saying when Maharaj didn't know what was going to happen, he was in the mood of, well, whatever Krishna wants. So he wasn't upset. And the reason he could say that is because that's his MO, his mode operandi. That's the way he thinks. That's Krishna consciousness. So he's so used to accepting the will of Krishna, accepting what he can't change. So even at the time of death, if that were to be the reality that he couldn't control that, it's like, okay, if that's what Krishna wants, because he's used to doing that. So you can imagine if you're not used to doing that, if it's always, I can never accept what Krishna wants, I always have to change it. Why this devotee has to do that? Why this has to be this way? We have to do this, change this. Then at the time of death, when obviously we can't control that situation, we could have a really difficult time. So that's why Prabhupada talks about death as the final exam, because it's testing you. Have you given up control of what you can't control? Have you learned to tolerate things which are disturbing? Have you learned how to think of Krishna even when the world is going topsy-turvy? And say, what's good about the coronavirus? Well, one thing is the world is topsy-turvy. And so now it's a test. Can I remain Krishna conscious? I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But can I remain Krishna conscious? Can I depend on Krishna? Can I have faith that Krishna will take care of me? And if the answer is yes, then we can understand at the time of death, we will be well prepared for that because we've prepared our whole life for that. If you're married and your wife or husband leaves you, either dies or leaves you, or anything that you have that's very dear to you leaves you, it's kind of like somebody dying. It's like a death. It's very difficult, very difficult. But these are things that happen. Sometimes your best friend turns against you, and you lose your best friend, or your brother or sister, so it's the nature of the world that even things don't die. Sometimes we lose them, and at these times, these are the tests. Okay, how are you going to deal with this? And so if we think, if I can't learn this lesson now of something simple, this person didn't die, they just told me they didn't like me, and now I'm not able to deal with it, or they criticized me and I'm not able to deal with it. How am I going to deal with leaving my body, leaving everything, if I can't even learn to deal with a little something, or I just lost some money and now I'm very depressed or whatever? You're going to lose a lot more than money. We're going to lose a lot more than money when we leave our body. We're going to lose everything, even the body itself. How are we going to deal with that if we can't even deal with the loss of something here? So these are meditations that I think are extremely important for us as devotees. Don't you agree? Do you agree? Yes or yes? Krishna consciousness is like this series of meditations. We could call this course Death Meditations. Maybe I should write a book. Call it Death Meditations. Actually, when I was compiling these, I thought, we need to write a book about dying. And the best people to help us write the book are the people who died and came back, who had out of the body and came back. Wouldn't that be amazing? We take this whole philosophy, what we're talking about now, And then we also could interview people who left their body or people who came close to it. Like sometimes you get very sick and then you think you're leaving your body, or you get in an accident and you could swear, okay, this is the end. And what were your realizations and so forth. Yeah. Write a book. Okay. So if I'm going to write a book, you're all going to send me money so I can sit here and write the book and be able to buy my chapati stall and rice. Because otherwise, when you sit around and write books, you know what happens to the rice stall and chapatis? They don't show up because there's no money. Hare Krishna. All right. Anyway, it's definitely there in my head. I think this book would be amazing. Like, what do we call it? The manual, the death manual. The dying for idiots, dying for dummies, or what do we call it? The art of dying. Death made easy. Death for dummies. Oh, if you want to give a donation, just go on my website, yamunadd.mp, click donate, and then all the ways you can donate are available. Thank you. Okay, so I'm looking at all your comments and going on as we're talking, so we can just keep reading because I don't have to go back, because I'm doing this more like real-time class. So we're going to read from the Bhagavatam. The next quote is from Bhagavatam. It's the 2nd canto, 7th chapter, text 34 and 35. This is really interesting because I had mentioned yesterday about how it was a blessing to die on the battlefield of Kurukshetra because Krishna was there. And so here are some details about actually what kind of blessing it was and how it was a blessing and who got blessed and in different ways. Is there any other ways we could help? Maybe research. If any of you want to do any research about dying, maybe by going on the internet or something and getting testimonials of people who've left their body, how to learn to die in 3 days, and 7 secrets to dying, 5 steps to dying with ease. Yeah, we could do some research on it, from I'm sure there's a lot out there of, people in the field, the hospice field, how you go through different stages, denial, this and that, then acceptance, and how you prepare for it, and what happens. And, I think the big question with dying is, what are you so attached to that you're going to have trouble giving up at the time of death? And I always think about this. In my life, in my world, I always think, do not become too attached to anything. There are natural objects of attachment, but don't become so attached that it's going to be difficult to give it up. Share your experiences, yeah, all of that, yeah. So one of you has to volunteer to be the source who gets all this information so it doesn't come into all my email, and then we could start compiling it, and then start to make sense out of it. And any of you who are good with writing or organizing material, that would help. I think it'd be an important book. So let's read this, 2:7, 34, 35. It's entitled, Everyone Who Died at Kurukshetra Was Blessed. So you have to go back up again to read it under Kamaniya's comments. All persons who participated in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, or otherwise with the Lord, or with Baladev, etc., would benefit by attaining spiritual existence according to the situation of their minds at the time of death. How do you contact me? You can write me on Facebook. Just Mahatma Das on Facebook. So listen to this. Those who recognized the Lord would enter Vaikuntha, and those who estimated the Lord only as a powerful being would attain salvation by merging into the spiritual existence of the impersonal Brahmajyoti of the Lord. But every one of them would get released from material existence. Since such is the benefit of those who played with the Lord inimically, play with the Lord inimically. One can imagine what would be the position of those who devoutly serve the Lord in a transcendental relationship with Him. So, Prabhupada's not talking about those who were fighting on the side of Arjuna. He's talking about those who were fighting against him and Arjuna. Yeah, Vaishnava Care online. Shravaniya, why don't you, can you take that as a service to find some things that could be useful? So, Prabhupada is saying, if you were fighting on the opposite side, but you knew Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead and you died in the battle, you would go to Vaikuntha. And if you didn't know he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or even you were inimical to him, but you saw him while you're fighting, you became purified, so that when you were killed, you would go to Brahman. In other words, by seeing Krishna, all your sins would be removed. So when we say they merged in Brahman, what it means is there's no more karma to come back and take a physical form. They became purified by seeing. And then, even though they weren't Krishna-conscious bhaktas, devotees, who had a desire to go to Vaikuntha, or who understood Krishna's supreme position, the personality of Godhead, still, just by seeing Krishna, even not knowing who he is, even being inimical to him, by seeing they became purified of all sins, and then were liberated from having to take another material body, and they could go enjoy transcendental bliss. So Prabhupada said, since such is the benefit of those who played with the Lord inimically, one can imagine what would be the position of those who devoutly served the Lord in a transcendental relationship with him. Isn't that beautiful? Even the enemies get liberation by seeing Krishna. So now, if you're thinking, well, I don't know what's going to happen to me at death, I'm not a very good devotee. Okay, those are concerns. I would say be a good devotee. But the same token, Prabhupada's saying, look at the enemies. They were doing pretty good. They saw Krishna. They were doing pretty good. They got liberated. What yogis and jnanis would try to achieve with great difficulty, arura krichena, great austerities, padam padam tata, to get to that transcendental position, just by seeing Krishna, they got it. That's amazing when you think about it, isn't it? You agree? That's amazing. I mean, you've heard this before, the enemies get liberated, but sometimes we hear these things, but it's just like it doesn't enter. And sometimes we need to let it enter. Like, think about that. That's amazing. Who is this person that liberates people who don't like him? Who is this person that liberates people who are against him? Let that sink in. Who is that person? That person is the most lovable person, the most amazing person, because he benedicts even those who are against him. Okay. Should we read more? You have more time? I mean, we've been going to an hour and a half. It's kind of long. We lose some of you the last half hour. Let's see. We'll read one more, or a few more. Okay, here's the next one, Bhagavad Gita. Your last thought in this life becomes your first thought in the next life. Remember, that's the t-shirt. Your last thought becomes your first thought in the next life. Bhagavad Gita 8.6, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. You know this verse. Very famous verse. And so I pulled some of the purport out. And what I was thinking was, because of all this discussion we're having, I thought, well, now the purport, which maybe we would kind of breeze over, like, yeah, I know all that, I've read it before. Maybe it'll take on a different perspective. And then, Kat, will get to your restatement. And, yeah. The process of changing one's nature at the critical moment of death is here explained. A person who at the end of his life quits his body thinking of Krishna attains the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. But it is not true that a person who thinks of something other than Krishna attains the same transcendental state. In other words, you can't not be Krishna conscious and go to heaven, as some religions think. This is a point we should note very carefully. How can one die in the proper state of mind? Maharaj Bharat, although a great personality, thought of a deer at the end of his life, and so in the next life he was transferred into the body of a deer. Although as a deer he remembered his past activities, he had to accept that animal body. Of course, one's thoughts during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thought at the moment of death. Very important point. So life creates one's next life. You know, let me read that again. Of course, one's thoughts during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thoughts at the moment of death. So this life creates one's next life. You've probably heard it said that at the moment of death, your whole life flashes. And obviously what's most important is going to be where you focus on. And obviously, so many things you were thinking of may come up. So what should we think of? That little blue boy, Krishna. Yes, exactly. This statement is interesting. One's thoughts during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thoughts at the moment of death. So we have all this thinking. It accumulates and it affects. Yes. Okay, I'm going to get back to the conversation in a minute. If in one's present life one lives in the mode of goodness and always thinks of Krishna, it is possible for one to remember Krishna at the end of one's life. That will help one be transferred to the transcendental nature of Krishna. If one is transcendentally absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental. Wow! That's good news, isn't it? Therefore, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, is the best process for successfully changing one's state of being at the end of one's life. The conclusion of this purport is chant good rounds. Chant good rounds, if you want to go back to Godhead. Chant, chant, chant. Good rounds, rounds, rounds. Good, 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 rounds, rounds, rounds. It's the best process for successfully changing one's state. Okay, now it's time to take a pause to figure out how we're going to write this book. Okay, so the first thing I want to say about this book is I think it's extremely important. And I have another one or two books that I want to complete. Both have been started. One's on Prabhupada and one's, I was just thinking, I started a book a long time ago about my own journey. And I didn't think it was that important, but now I'm thinking it could become very readable and valuable to devotees and non-devotees, or people who are not yet devotees. So, to do this book on death, if you could all be working on it in the background, and so I don't have to initially be involved in it, that would be fantastic. I can be involved in the philosophy part, but the other information we're gathering, and there may be many stories in Shastra also to gather. And so Kat has given her email, and she's willing to be the central source for taking information. Thank you. So Kat, when you send me a Facebook message, can you send me your email? Then Kamaniya says, perhaps Mahatma Prabhu can include that as a note in the title description, because not everyone who watches later will follow these comments. Can I add, after we end class, can I add more to the note, or do I have to add it now? Does anybody know? And then Priyam Badha says, I could assist you. Bit of research, yeah. I have another devotee who can do research. He was just asking me yesterday. So we have to coordinate. If we can coordinate with Kat, I could be in touch with you. Who would research what, so we don't duplicate. There's another book on Guna Grammar. I'm trying to get someone else to write that. You can edit the video description later. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop here. And Die Before Dying. I haven't read it. Yeah. Why doesn't someone look at that book and see? But Die Before Dying also means die to your material life. But the point is, you don't want to die with all these attachments that would keep you here. That's got to be part of that topic. But I think the topic is so important, because death is like this big amorphous, who knows what it is. And even though we have so much discussion about it in our books, we never really dissect it and look at it in a way that we can kind of overcome our fears. So I think this is really important, isn't it? Okay, so why don't we end now? We can end early. And we're only on page 6. Wow, we have a lot to go. And we have these lectures also, which could be utilized for the book as well, the points. Writing books is not easy. Any of you have tried to write a book? It takes time. You have to hide out. And yeah, sometimes I think, why is anybody stupid enough to write a book? Kind of destroys your life while you're writing it. But it's like anything. You know, when you're passionate about something, you just do it. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for coming. Invite your friends. Tell them you no longer have to fear death. Those days are gone. Now you can face your death in Krishna consciousness, fearlessly leaving your body in the hands of your Supreme Lord, Controller, beautiful Govinda. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.